It's always good to have more options when it comes to 360 cameras, and this camera is very different to the rest. It only has one lens for starters, so it's not a 360 camera in the traditional sense, but the results of the 360 images that it produces are really surprising. So let's get straight to it and take a look. So the first big question is, how does it work with just one lens? It's actually quite a clever design, and the camera comes with a built-in motor that rotates when you press the shutter button, and you use this attachment that goes underneath the camera and onto the selfie stick, and it's ready to go. It only has two buttons, so you simply turn the camera on with this button, and then you push this button here to capture your image, and the camera will first rotate to take a light meter reading and evaluate the exposure, and then it takes 4 photos, one on each side. And the whole process from metering to taking the photos takes around 30 seconds, and you can either press the button on the side of the camera or you can use the app. And because the camera rotates, you don't necessarily have to run and hide either to keep out a shot. When you take your photo, you can just follow behind the camera, but you do run the risk of the camera moving, which may affect the stitch line. So I prefer to use the app to start and stop recording and wait outside the room. The app is really easy to use, and once you've taken your photos, you can see the app stitch them together in a matter of 10 seconds or so. The app has very limited functionality and limited features, but this makes it really simple to use. So you can set a timer, select to have the nadir patch to cover the tripod, turn off the sound prompts, and also turn on any scene. And the any scene feature on the app is described as inhibiting overexposure caused by bright light. So it's effectively in HDR mode. And this description is another aspect of this camera that I like. It uses terminology that's simple, so that beginners in particular don't get overwhelmed and don't get confused. And once you've taken your photos, you can download them from the app and then use them in your chosen virtual tour software. And Trisio also have a desktop app as well if you prefer to work that way. I personally love how simple this camera is to use, with the simplicity of the app and the camera settings, but some would see this as limiting. First off, you can only shoot in JPEG with auto exposure. Now, I'm not against auto exposure. I use auto exposure most of the time with these smaller cameras, just because it's hassle free and convenient when you're just trying to produce something that's fun for social media. The big exception, however, is usually virtual tours, because you want maximum control of your image so you can produce the best quality images possible. But to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised with the results that I got from this camera using JPEG auto exposure. And this is another selling point for beginners that want to create a quality image, but they want an easier and faster workflow. In the lounge photo, the camera coped well with the bright light from either end, and has given a nice exposure overall to the image. In an ideal world, I'd bring down the exposure of the outside through the French doors, but all things considered, it's done a great job. I turned the house lights on as well, and it has coped quite well with the mixed lighting, but the tungsten light above the table is what's probably caused the window light from the bay window to look a bit blue. With the stitching, even on the floor with all the lines from the flooring, the stitching looks good, and it's held together around the tripod area, which is usually the weakest stitching point. I challenged the camera's stitching a bit more in the kitchen, as there are a lot more lines for the camera to contend with on the floor and on the wall tiles. And at quick glance, the camera's done a good job overall, but if you look more closely at the lines on the floor, even though they join up, they're not all straight. I compared the results with the two most popular 360 cameras in the same price range, the ONE X2 and the ONE RS. So all three cameras shot in HDR or the equivalent on the Trisio Lite 2. And here are the results straight out of the camera with no adjustments made. The Trisio gives an overall more natural looking photo, which is less saturated with greater dynamic range. And it holds more details in the shadows and in the highlights, especially around the stainless steel sink top, where the ONE X2 and the ONE RS lose exposure and natural colour. Because the Trisio is 32 megapixels, it retains a lot more detail when you zoom into the image as well. And just to add the stitching photo from the kitchen, where you can see the difference in stitching between the three cameras. With all these plus points of the camera and some great results compared to some of the competition, what are the downsides? The biggest and the most obvious is that because it's aimed at virtual tours, there is no video functionality at all. It has an internal battery rated at 200 minutes and an internal storage for up to 1200 photos. So you have to manage your working day well so you don't run out of battery, but in terms of actual photo storage is ample on there for several shoots, and I always back up in between shoots anyway. Trisio has simplified everything with this camera for virtual tour use, and it's perfect for the beginner, and it's perfect if you're on a budget, and it's got a fast and easy workflow. And if you're serious about making money from your virtual tours, then check out the Virtual Tour Pro course, which shows you everything you need. My name's Rich, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.